Hey guys, happy Friday. Time for another Q&A. And this week I had a really good question from Tiffany that was actually inspired by the email that I sent last week in which I talked about metabolic conditioning circuits and working out specifically for fat loss. So Tiffany's question was this: I lift heavy 3 to 4 times a week with light cardio or HIIT 3 times a week and working 5 days a week. With a goal of losing weight, I have a calorie deficit in place, but am I wasting my time going heavy with weights? Should I be more focused on HIIT and lightweight with higher reps since I'm not consuming enough calories to support growth? This is such a great question, and I can see why that could be confusing, Tiffany, based on what I said about the fact that you must eat and plan for specific goals. When in a calorie deficit, unless you are brand new to lifting, it is virtually almost impossible to build significant amounts of new muscle. And that's because muscle growth needs fuel. And if you're in a deficit, your body just doesn't have enough extra fuel to basically facilitate any new muscle growth. If you are very new to strength training, sometimes you can make that adaptation. But if you've been working out and lifting for over a year, it's really almost impossible to do that. So, should you, when in a calorie deficit, if your main goal is fat loss, should you not lift heavy? Are you wasting your time? And what I told Tiffany was this: you still want to lift heavy, but heavy is going to be relative in these situations. So if you're trying to specifically work towards strength related or hypertrophy muscle building goals, you're going to need to eat a lot more food, probably in a surplus, at the very least maintenance, but probably a surplus. And you're going to be specifically training for those goals. So that's going to mean lifting super, super heavy. If you're training for strength, it's a lot of max effort work, 1 rep max and things like that. So how does that differ then for fat loss? If you're in a calorie deficit, should you not lift heavy? You should still lift heavy. However, your heavy is going to be different than what it is if you're at a maintenance or a surplus of calories. Physically, you're not going to be as strong. You're going to fatigue a lot more easily. I'm currently about a month and a half out from my bikini competition, and I'm in a pretty strict calorie deficit. And I'll tell you that I go to the gym and I cannot lift the same amount of weight that I could 2 months ago when my calories were higher. I'm still lifting to what my max would be, or what my max is, but what my max is has changed based on the fact that I'm in a deficit and I just don't have the same kind of strength. My body just isn't as fueled. So you still want to lift heavy because you still want the metabolic stimulus that comes from heavy weight and really challenging your muscles. Low weight, high rep has a place. And a lot of times you kind of want to work that in, especially if you're in, an undulating periodization, where you may want to go 1 week of that after about 4 weeks of heavy, just to change it up and keep your muscles challenged. But high rep, low weight is more of an endurance challenge for your body, and it has its place if you're training for something very specific. Say you're going to do an endurance event. If you're going to do something like I have a client who's going to go hiking in the Grand Canyon, and we're going to work on endurance for her muscles because she's going to have to be carrying really heavy stuff for a very long period of time. So yes, she does need strength, but she also needs to train those fibers for endurance. So it's not going to be as metabolically challenging, however, to your body as lifting heavy even in a deficit, just because the stimulus that is placed on your muscle and on your central nervous system is not as taxing. So my advice is, yes, keep your HIIT, especially for fat loss. When we're talking true HIIT, where you're working at 85% of your max heart rate and then recovering to 55 and repeating, that's what true HIIT is. I'm talking sprints or other really, really high, fast, hard, short 30-second work. That's 2 to 3 days a week. More than that, you're probably not doing true HIIT, and if you are, you're just going to burn yourself out. I do sprints twice a week, and that's the only true HIIT that I do. Everything else is what I call metabolic conditioning, which are circuits where my heart rate stays higher. There are rest periods involved, but I don't come down to full rest like I do with HIIT, and my heart rate doesn't get as high as it would in a HIIT. It's not 85%, it might be 60 to 75%, and I stay there longer. Metabolic conditioning for fat loss, I would recommend 3 to 4 days a week, even up to 5 or 6 if you're heavily conditioned, if you're an experienced athlete. But you still want your 3 to 4 days of strength training. Why? Because it's really important to keep your muscles healthy, to keep your muscles strong. Are you going to make huge strength gains or huge hypertrophy gains? You're not when you're in a deficit, but you're going to maintain your muscle also through that calorie deficit if you continue to apply as much stimulus as you can to your best effort. So thank you, Tiffany, for that great question. Hopefully that cleared some things up. Lift heavy, go hard, train for specificity. Remember, specific goals, work at one specific goal for a period of time. You can't do both. You can't gain a ton of muscle or get really strong while you're losing fat. You've got to pick one or the other, and your nutrition is a huge part of it. So make sure you know, or you're working with someone who knows how to specifically target your goals. Thank you, guys. Keep the questions coming. Talk to you next week.